back to another video. I'm Judith and I'm bringing you my August book haul. I started off August being quite good about book buying and book hauling, and then by the end of this month I have added 27 books to my TBR, which is madness. They're all very exciting. Some of them I have already read, and looking at this pile in front of me and next to me and around me, this whole room is a mess. I'm really excited to talk to you about them. So I'm going to go in segments, and within those segments go in chronological order so that there is some kind of logic. The washing machine is running. We've just got back from a weekend where we were running an event for about 100 people. I feel a little bit like I'm in another universe, but I'm going to film this anyway. You'll just have to forgive me and my surroundings. Let's start with NetGalley, because I hold a bunch of NetGalley books this month. First up was The Quantum Garden, which is the sequel to The Quantum Magician, which is being published by Solaris. This is by Derek Kunsken? I'm not sure. I described this first book as a sci-fi novel that's also a bit like being hit in the face with a physics textbook in a really good way. Like, somehow it manages to do the hard science and still have interesting characters. It's kind of heisty. I really enjoyed book one, so I'm interested to see how they pull off book two. The next book I hauled in August was The Lost Princess by Connie Glynn. I already talked about this in my August TBR. I have now read it, so I will talk more about it in my wrap-up, but basically these are kind of quite young YA, contemporary but silly contemporary. I'd say they walk the line between contemporary and fantasy. There's probably a word for that genre, I just don't know it. I thought it was silly. I have more to talk about that when I film my wrap-up, when I'm a little bit less hazy. The next book from NetGalley is Deeplight by Frances Hardinge. I love Frances Hardinge's books with a passion. Every single time I read them, I'm just sort of sucked into how creative and weird and wonderful her books are. Her writing is absolutely beautiful. Deeplight is her latest book. I don't know too much about this. It's undersea, it's gods, it's stories. I'm just really excited to get to this soon. The next two kind of come as a pair. These are The Wendy and The Navigator by Erin Michelle Skye and Stephen Brown. I don't know much about these. I typically do not request indie fantasy books. I'm very open to receiving pitches from authors and publishers, but very often I'll be like, you know what, I'm okay. I really want to find a really good Wendy in a story because she's so often rubbish. Wendy from Peter Pan, I should say. Her original ending to the story is pants, and I'm excited to see if this manages to do her justice. The next book I don't think I have to talk about too much. This is The Beautiful by Renée Ahdieh. This is a vampire novel. Apparently vampires are back. Are we excited? Let me know. But yes, I've read Flame in the Mist, Smoke in the Sun, Wrath on the Dawn, Rose and the Dagger, the four of her books that I've already read. She writes fantasy YA romance, so I'll be interested to see if this manages to be a fantasy YA romance with vampires that isn't super annoying. Time will tell. The next book I have is Into the Crooked Place by Ali Christo. I reread To Kill a Kingdom back in August, so it's quite fitting to have hauled her next book, Into the Crooked Place, now, which I think is a heisty book. I'm not 100% certain, I think, but she did a reading of it at a hotkey event I was at last year, and we got very excited about it, so I'm really looking forward to reading that. The next book from NetGalley was The Deathless Girls by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. I'm not saying that name right. Kieran Millwood Hargrave. There we go. Again, I don't know too much about this. I am one of the hopefully many people who was not 100% set on Girls of Ink and Stars. Is that how her first book's called? I'll put the cover up. I just thought it was meh. I didn't care. It wasn't long enough to do anything interesting, and it wasn't short enough to be a short story. I wasn't on board. So it'll be interesting to see if this book is any good. I have a friend who read it who wasn't totally convinced, so we'll see. And last but certainly not least, we have Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Nyan. I'm really excited to read this queer YA fantasy sequel to Girls of Paper and Fire. It came back to me, which I read last year and really enjoyed. So we'll see if this manages to have a good sequel or if it's a bit of a sophomore slump kind of thing. Looking forward to reading that. That comes out in November, so maybe we'll get to that this month, maybe next month, we'll see. Moving on to physical arcs, some of these you will see me talk about in vlogs. The first arc I received this month was Turning Darkness into Light. I've talked about this enough in enough videos. This is amazing. I've already read this. Phenomenal. I want more of it. Give it to me. Keep it in my bones. Then I received The Girl That Sea Gave Back, which again I've talked about in vlog. This is from the same author, it's Adrian Young, the same author as Sky in the Deep. Need to get to this soon. I'm reading this month. I think it's on my TBR. And yeah, we'll be interested to see how that goes. House of Sundering Flames, Aliette de Bodard. I need to read this soon because this I think is already out. It just took a while for the arc to get to me because of some address problems. But yes, need to get to this. Looking forward to Alternate Paris, War, Dragons, yes. And then there's the Silver Wind or the Silver Wind, but I think it's probably Wind, which is a time travel, time lost, time regained, time disrupted. Time travel books are something of a touch and go for me. Sometimes they really work, sometimes they get bogged down in the ethics and or science of time travel, and I just don't care about that. So we'll see how that goes. The 3 that I haven't read of those are on my TBR for September, so hopefully we'll be able to talk about them in about a month. I'm going to do a brief interlude to talk about audiobooks I hold this month because I'm enjoying audiobooks at the moment. I hold Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I've already listened to that. It was amazing. I never thought I would say that about a book that featured giant space spiders, but oh my goodness, I had so many feelings. And then right at the end of the month, for my next audiobook, I picked up Godsgrave, which is part of my September TBR. Ooh, that's upside down. Which is part of my September TBR, partly to help me finish that before Dark Dawn comes out in 2 days. But yes, I really like the audiobook narrator for these books, and I'm going to have to see if I want to get Dark Dawn as well so that I can listen to the 3 of them. I'm a big re-listener of audiobooks. Now on to books I bought. This pile was not very big, and then it grew exponentially towards the end of the month, so I'm going to go in chronological order. The first book I picked up, I've talked about it in a vlog, this is Heartstopper Volume 2. This is a graphic novel by Alice Oseman. It's queer and it's lovely, and it's probably the only kind of contemporary thing I'm stupidly invested in. I love this webcomic and owning the books. They're just so happy and realistic and paced wonderfully, and I love the characters, and it's like comfort food in graphic novel form. I'm going to put this next to the other book on the shelf because I have already read this. I read it the day I got it while sat on a bus. And it's just wholesome and lovely, and if you haven't checked out the webcomic, because you can read all of it for free, this is one of the most lovely things. If you don't want to buy the book, if you haven't got the access to the book, you can read all of it for free online. I will put a link in the description below if I remember. Then I picked up To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This is her latest novella. I'm really looking forward to this. I have the first book in the Wayfarers series on my reread TBR for September, and I think this might have to be thrown in, even though I have too many books to read this month, just because I don't want to leave it too long. But I have a friend who's read this who loved it, and she loves Becky Chambers, and I love Becky Chambers, and I really, really want to get to this. So that was a great purchase this month. Moving on, I have a selection of books that I bought while I was on holiday for a weekend with my mum. We went to Gloucestershire and we went to Cheltenham on a day out and managed to tear up the town. So the first 3 books I bought there were from, I think, an Oxfam bookshop, and it was the best Oxfam bookshop I've ever seen, because so often with these things, their fantasy sections or their YA sections are mixed into either all of the fiction or the children's publishing, and you kind of have to hunt for everything. But in this case, whoever was organising it was just super good at that. And they also had 3 for £5 on any kind of fiction, and I basically went mad. So I bought 1 adult fantasy, obviously this is The Hobbit. Then I picked up 2 more books that I've technically already read, because charity shop book shopping, I tend to buy things I've already read that I'm nostalgic for but do not want to pay full price for. This is The Secret of the Sirens by Julia Golding. I read these books when I was probably 11 or 12, maybe even younger. And they are about mythical creatures and a society that protects them, and it's the most like middle grade, a young girl discovers the society, she has magical powers, but for me, a massive ancient mythology nerd at that age, this was like crack to me. And also at the time, I don't think they probably still do it, but you could go on the website, you could fill out a quiz, they would sort you into the houses. They're not houses, but you know what I mean. And then they sent you in the post a badge and some information, and you joined the society, and it was the coolest thing. I think I did it 3 times, which you probably weren't meant to do. Never mind. I'm going to definitely reread this when I have time, because the nostalgia factor is too real. Next, I picked up Because of the Gloamglozer, which is by Paul Stewart with illustrations by Chris Riddell. I love the Edge Chronicles. They are some of my favourite stories. I used to own all of them when I was younger, and then for some obscure reason, if I could go back and kick myself, I would. I got rid of them, and now I'm gradually kind of buying them back when I have the time and the money. After that, we went to a bookshop, which I will insert footage from that vlog, because you need to understand how mad this bookshop was. You walk in at first, you're like, oh my goodness, this is Aladdin's Cave of Wonders. a bookshop in Cheltenham that has so many books that they're piled up in every corner and the bookshelves go slanty. This is like the dream. And then you realise that actually you can't find anything to go through every single book. You'd have to like move books everywhere. It was madness. But what I did pick up was a pretty much brand new copy of Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. I have read this before. I read this from the library, and then I bought the subsequent second and third books, which are sitting just here. But I did not own the first one, and they looked sad on my shelf, and if I want to reread these, it would be nice to be able to start at book one. So glad to have that picked up. The next book is a bit of a wild card, and I blame my mother for this entirely, but we went into like a little church in the place where we were having dinner, and they had a little used bookstall, and it was 3 for £2 or 3 for £1 or something ridiculously cheap. And my mum was getting 2 and she said, pick something. These are all books that people have probably thrown away while they're on holiday. Let's see what it is. So I picked up this, which is called The Mask of Troy by David Gibbons, and it looks just terrible, even from just the review from The Mirror that says, what do you get if you cross Indiana Jones with Dan Brown? Like, yes. As many of you will know, my degree is actually in archaeology, so this should be interesting. I just think it's going to be silly, stupid fun, and may warrant a rant review, or it could be amazing and I could have discovered a new favourite author. I don't think that's going to happen though. Last but not least, I went into Blackwell's in Oxford and I went a little bit ham. I picked up City of Lies by Sam Hawke, which has been recommended to me by many friends. The first line of this book, which I will read to you, is, I was 7 years old the first time my uncle poisoned me. I am really into poisoning books at the moment, and I think this is going to be really, really, really cool. I don't think I'm going to get to it till next month at the earliest, but I'm looking forward to getting to it when it does. And the last 3 are sort of Wildcards again. I picked up 3 books for doing some research for the novel I'm writing. I'm hoping to get the next chunk of this novel written in November as part of NaNoWriMo. I have quite a lot of it written, but I really love to finish it. So I picked up 3 books that will hopefully indicate some of the themes of the book. This is Raising the Dead, which is a non-fiction book. These are all non-fiction. And this is about the concept of reanimation and related issues in kind of the 19th century. So the history of reanimation and the sort of desire and science behind what people were doing. So it's sort of that pseudoscience stuff. But I thought this sounded really interesting and will probably be quite a speedy non-fiction read, but might have some interesting moments in it. So there's that. This is Medieval Bodies by Jack Hartnell, which I believe is fairly new. This is about life, death and art in the Middle Ages. I thought this would be really cool for kind of ancient, which can feed into fantasy, interpretations of death. And last but not least, I have Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty, who is Ask a Mortician on YouTube. I read her other book and absolutely loved it. I loved her writing, and I wanted to read her first book, which is her kind of memoir of working in a crematorium and getting into the funeral industry. I love what she has to say about the death industry and Western attitudes towards death. I think this is going to be a really cool read. So there you have it. 27 books, unless I miscounted, in which case I'll put the actual number up on the screen. This was ridiculous, but also I'm really excited to read these. A lot of these will get read in the next month, and hopefully my September haul will be smaller. Otherwise, this is an unsustainable book buying habit, and I entirely blame Justine and Asher. If you like this video, if you want to support me in my book buying, book reading, book reviewing journey, you can subscribe, you can like this video if you liked it, you can follow me on all of my socials, and I will see you in the next one.